All right, guys. Welcome to the Sunday Mac Forum video chat for November 16th, 2014. Um, we had a minor little technical delay there. Um, the Google plugin was not seeing my camera for some reason, and I had to restart there. Not quite sure what was going on there, but it seems to be resolved now. We had this problem last week, but I discovered it the fix too late to really do anything about it. So we'll go ahead and we'll get rolling with the video chat tonight. Uh, Hopefully, Rad Dave will be with us later. I sent him a PM earlier, but not sure if he's going to be able to make it. In either case, we'll go forward with what we have. You'll have me for a little while tonight. Um, Maybe a kind of short podcast, but that's okay. We want to start, of course, as usual. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit so I can read it with our rundown of the site statistics. We have a total of 280,872 threads, which consist of a total of 1,554,393 posts. And those posts were contributed by a total of 285,236 members. Speaking of the membership, as of about 10 minutes before start time, our newest member was Audio Bear. So welcome, Audio Bear, to the forum. Hope that you enjoy your stay and find a lot of useful information here. As usual, on the rundown for tonight, as usual, we have a few tips and tricks for you. I did promise you last week that I would start including some tips that might be helpful to switchers, and we'll kick that off in just a second. I'm going to be running down a few other things, including a way to rename multiple files in Finder if you're running Yosemite. And then also have a couple of tips, Yosemite-related tips that I gleaned from Cult of Mac. And of course, I'll post links to all of this in the notes at the bottom of the thread on the Google page. We'll get right into it here. Let me just reset everything so I can get back to where we were. And feel free, if you're watching, to comment. I'll also post the information that tonight in the show thread. Sometimes that doesn't get posted for an hour or two after the show, but we'll always add it to the show thread in the forum. I'm going to try to see if I can maybe think of a way, maybe we'll have to kick this idea around and see if it's any good. I may, in the future here, instead of putting the information show by show, just put it in one ongoing thread of tips and tricks, and then link to the individual tips in each show. That might consolidate things and get it a little more concise, and you won't have to worry about which show did I hear that tip in. We'll have to work on that a little bit and see how it works out. First of all, I want to get to a tip that might be helpful for some of our Windows users who are switching over to the Mac. Many Windows users, when they make the move to the Mac, initially you want the comfort of having, here's a feature that I had in Windows, how do I replicate it in the Mac? Now, as a general rule, you want to just dive right into the Mac way of doing things. But here's a tip that might come in handy. I know if I had thought of this, there were some times when it would come in handy to me. In one of the forum threads, one of our members asked about how on their iMac could they get the equivalent of the Windows My Computer function, you know, where you get to all of your computer related information and devices. Okay. And the closest equivalent you have on the Finder, on the Mac rather, is to make sure you're in the Finder and go to the Go menu and choose Computer. Okay. So in other words, you're going to go to the Finder, make sure you're in the Finder, not, I tried this earlier and I accidentally still had my Safari window up. In other words, I had the window minimized, but I was still inside the Safari program. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be in the Finder. And then you have two choices for how to do this. Either choose Go and then go to Computer, or press Command-Shift-C simultaneously. And that will bring up a window with all of your drives and everything. One of the adjustments that you may have to make, depending upon what you want in that list, is go into Finder Preferences and tell it what things you want in the sidebar. In other words, do you want your hard drive on the desktop? Do you want these things appearing in the sidebar? But that will get you the closest equivalent to the Windows equivalent of My Computer. You may find it useful, you may not. As usual, it's adaptable. In other words, you may not like this. Some people might. Use it if it suits your needs. And the next tip, and this is that's an example of a tip that I had not really thought of. I've been using a Mac for years, and I didn't really think of doing it that way. I saw something recently where someone has put that keyboard shortcut basically into a little script that they can click on. You could do that if someone's interested. I'll post the how-tos and how to do that, but essentially I think the keyboard equivalent is enough. Speaking of keyboard equivalents, I got into the Mac because of the GUI and not wanting to type command line things and those kinds of things. I had a GUI interface on my Apple IIgs, and I liked it much better than the older menu-driven system, so I do a lot of my stuff out of the GUI. Consequently, there are a lot of keyboard commands that I don't remember. There's some that I use all the time. For example, you know, cut, paste, those kinds of things, and a few others, undo, those kinds of things. But there are a number of others, some of them very helpful, some of them not. Whether they're helpful or not kind of depends on how your brain works. If you're a big keyboard shortcut person, then you're going to like that capability. I use it some, not as much as a lot of people do, so consequently there are a lot of keyboard commands that I don't remember. There are many of them, both for the base operating system and also for other programs. So I'll try to find a good reference for those and post that link. That might also be of help to some of the switchers. All right, now that we have talked about that and a hint specifically for switchers, let's look at a couple of other Yosemite-related things that might address some minor issues that some people are having with Yosemite. First of all, a tip that I had not thought of. I hadn't tried this, but you now have the option in Yosemite, and I'm pulling up a window here with my little cheat for how to do this. You now have the option of renaming multiple files from within the Finder. In essence, what you do is highlight the files that you want to rename, right-click, and then in that contextual menu, there's an option that says rename X number of items. So if you chose 6 items, it would say rename 6 items. If you chose 7, it would say rename 7 items. That's a feature that, as far as I remember, was not in Mavericks. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, and it might well be. I don't normally rename multiple files at once quite that way, but it's a handy thing to have every once in a while in case you need it. I'll post the link to that tip. That comes from something that I was reading on Cult of Mac as part of some of their tips on using Yosemite. Another one in that same vein from the same site essentially deals with a change to Safari. In the past, when you had a URL up in the address bar, Safari would show you the entire URL. So if you weren't interested in knowing exactly where you were about to go, it would show you the entire URL. In the current version of Safari that shipped with Yosemite, that's not the way it's done anymore. The default is to show you basically a shortened, cleaned up title. In my case right now, I'm looking at the page for the show, and all it shows me is the main plus google.com page. Doesn't show me the entire URL. It just says plus google.com. So if you want to have the longer URL that we've been used to in previous versions of the OS, you can go into Safari, look in the preferences, and look under advanced preferences. And I think it's the very first option. Let me just double check to be sure, but I think it's the very first option in Safari's preferences that basically says, show me the shortened URL. Okay, here you go. If you go to Safari and in the advanced, click on the advanced tab, the first option there under smart search field is show full website address. If that's checked, it's going to show you the entire URL. If that's unchecked, then it's going to show you a shortened, for lack of a better word, cleaned up, more aesthetically pleasing URL. So that's kind of up to you which one you prefer. I noticed that we have, so to keep that in mind as you go about doing things. There are times when I want to see the URL. There are other times when I don't mind the cleaner aesthetic. But most of the time, I've got my URL shortened down to the cleaner aesthetic. Because for the most part, I go to a relatively small number of sites, unless I'm specifically researching something. And so I'm not quite as concerned with problem URLs as I have been in the past. But it's nice to know that you can look at them all the way and look at the entire URL. Okay, as usual, I'll post that note. Also, another thing from Cult of Mac, this is one that I have not experimented with at the moment. Let's see how to put this. Some of you who have been around the Mac for a good long while probably remember a feature in iChat where you could share your screen, initiate a screen share. with the person that you were talking with. And then they could accept or reject as they saw fit. You can still do something like that in the new iMessages app in Yosemite. To get screen sharing, click on the details view in the top right of the conversation thread. And if the contact is on Yosemite, you'll be able to request a screen share session. So for this to work, you've got to both be on Yosemite, and you have the option when you click in that details area. That's what will initiate the screen share with your partner, and then they have the option of accepting or rejecting. Screen sharing can be tremendous. That type of screen sharing can be tremendously helpful if you are troubleshooting something with a friend who maybe is not quite as knowledgeable as a Mac user, or if you're wanting to demonstrate something. I had a friend of mine when we were under iChat doing that. He went to demonstrate something on the computer that I just was not understanding. He was having a problem that I was not having. I was not really understanding the difference between what he was trying to do and what I had done. So I let him take over my screen for a few minutes so that he could show me exactly what he was talking about. Obviously, if you're going to allow somebody to take control of your screen, it's going to need to be somebody that you can trust. But he was able to show me what he was talking about. We got the issue maybe a little more confused than it was, but we were eventually able to figure it out. It was a little weird sitting there watching the mouse moving around when you're doing absolutely nothing. That took a little getting used to the first couple of minutes. Those tips, though, come from, as I say, from Cult of Mac. They have some other Yosemite-related tips, other things related to Yosemite that some of them are known by now. Some of them are perhaps not as well known. Some of these are not ones that I had thought of right away. And anytime you have a new operating system, even power users are constantly finding new little tweaks and tidbits that you did not realize were in there at first. And that's a good thing. I had been playing around with the beta since the public beta was released, and I had not had an idea that those features were in there. I have discovered one thing that I do not like at the moment. And I know there's a workaround. I think there's a key shortcut for this, but one of the things that I don't like in Yosemite, and I discovered this the other day, and it just today made me start thinking in terms of figuring out what was causing it. I have dark mode enabled in Yosemite. In other words, that puts the menu bar in dark mode, and it puts the dock in dark mode. If you haven't tried it, I suggest you try it for a few minutes just to see what it's like. There are two things that I find a little bit frustrating. Number one, some of the software that puts icons and information in the menu bar does not play as nicely with dark mode as you would like. They don't crash, they're just a little harder to read. I suspect that updates will be coming from those vendors before too terribly long. I can't go through a whole list of them here. I've only run into a couple that are like that, but there are some that are out there. That's not what this is about. The other downside to dark mode is this, and I haven't figured out a workaround for this, beyond turning dark mode off. I'll let you know if I find one. If you are in dark mode and you go to Spotlight, either from the keyboard command or by clicking on the spyglass in the upper right corner of the menu bar, the Spotlight search window comes up, but because the menu bar, the main text entry bar, is darkened, in fact it's black, you cannot see what you're typing in that menu bar if you're in dark mode. Now, turning off dark mode gives you the Safari, a regular Spotlight window with the light background where you can type text. But if you've got your text color set to black, or which is probably by far the most common, you can't really read it very well if you've got dark mode enabled. And as I say, once you turn off dark mode, you get back the ability to read what you're typing in. A couple of times now I've typed in a search and realized that I typed one word twice only when I started getting the results back. Another area where I've noticed that dark mode does not really work very well, or has a few issues that maybe need to be cleaned up, is if you have your menu bar set so that Wi-Fi control, the little controller turn Wi-Fi on and off, is in the menu bar. You can see the little antenna icon, the broadcast icon for Wi-Fi. But when you click on the list of available networks, when you click that drop down to look at the list of available networks, because the background for that is black and the text is black, the names of the networks virtually disappear. So I think there are a few little tweaks. Overall, there are a lot of things I like about dark mode. Sometimes I find it hard to read the regular mode, and dark mode is easier. I never thought I would say that, because back in the old days, eons and eons ago, I was using someone's computer one day and they had set WordPerfect into the equivalent of dark mode. They had white text on a black background, and I found it, how do I put it? I found it a little hard on the eyes. It was worse than looking at a negative image. So I was kind of surprised that I liked dark mode. I think I'll like it better when they get these one or two little things cleaned up. It may be that some of these add-ons, some of these items need to check to see if you're in dark mode and make an adjustment to the way the stuff is presented. That would be, I'm sure it's going to take some work programming-wise, but that's something I'd like to see. If you read the post that I put in the forum about the show tonight, you know that I said that I was going to mention something about iTunes, two things related to iTunes 12. One of them I kind of like, one of them and a couple of things that I'm a little less enamored of. First, let's deal with one of the things that I like. Now you find with iTunes, I'm finding that overall I don't mind the interface. I like several of the things about it, the way it operates. Getting out of your way a little bit more. It seems a little less cluttered in many ways. And I like the fact that it seems to, for me, behavior-wise, it's been pretty stable. I have noticed a little bit of a lag between when I shut it down and when the audio stops, but other than that, that's been okay. And overall, it's been okay. But one of the things I dislike in iTunes right now is some of the changes with the new info window and where you tag files. And there are two things that I noticed that I find a little frustrating. One of them is this. If in the past, if you made a change to a tag and then you closed, you clicked OK to close the Get Info box, that change to the tag popped up almost immediately in your library. I discovered yesterday, this is the first time I had really noticed this. I don't recall this happening in the beta, but I could be wrong. Yesterday I was updating some tags on a couple of files in iTunes. The tag information was rather generic, and consequently they weren't being sorted properly. And I went in to fix it. And what I noticed is that when I clicked, let's say the one you want is right there in front of you, you click on it and you're going to change the title, for example. When you make the change, particularly if you don't open the Get Info box, if you just change it right there, that change is made, you've made it, you've clicked off onto another item so the change will set, but it doesn't show until you quit iTunes and relaunch. I don't know if that's a function of my system, but it happened consistently yesterday. I'm going to post a question in the forum later tonight about that to see if anybody else is having that issue. Essentially, what's happening is it's behaving as though you haven't entered any information. Everything is staying the way it is until you quit. Now, you can do several files. You can edit tags on several files and then quit and come back, and things will be as they should be. But that seems to me to be unnecessary. Still got a little more testing to see if I can pin down exactly what the circumstances are, exactly what the fix is, but that seems to me to be a tweak that needs to happen. The other thing that I'm finding about this new Get Info window, the new info window where you enter your tagged information, is sometimes when you click in one of those fields to start to enter text, if you're not looking very carefully, you may think, because the field, when you click on it and it becomes active, is almost the exact same color as the background, you may think that you've clicked in that field, and you haven't, because you got to get it exactly the right spot. And you start typing and nothing happens because you haven't really activated the text field. That happened to me several times yesterday. It happened to me once in a while in previous versions of the OS of iTunes, but I don't ever remember it being that noticeable and that big a pain in the keystroke. That's my big iTunes complaint at the moment. Otherwise, it's behaving remarkably well for me. I haven't had the problems that some people have, but I thought you might like to keep an eye out for that so we can see if this is something that's unique to my system or if it's something that's common to everybody's iTunes. And with that in mind, that covers a lot of the things that we kind of had on the agenda tonight. I hear from the noise in the background that we apparently are experiencing some more weather. Nothing major, but a little bit of thunder and everything going on there. So not much going on there, but you might have heard it in the background, depending on how good the microphone is tonight. Excuse me. And that's really most of the things that I had on the agenda for tonight. One of the things that I wanted to be sure that I mentioned relative to iTunes, though, I'm finding that um, I'm liking the having the recently viewed items list. Um, Another thing I wish they would fix, although I understand why they haven't, is no, I'm not going to rant about the lack of an iTunes server on Apple TV. I've talked about that before. You know where I stand on that one. I think it's a good idea. Cupertino apparently doesn't. That's okay. That's not what I was going to get to. Um, um, what I was going to say is one of the things that I would love to see within iTunes is to have, let's see how to get my train of thought back and explain this in a way that makes sense. You can edit a lot of songs at one time, but one of the things that I find kind of annoying is that when you're tagging things, sometimes it would be nice to have them tagged externally and read properly. But I'm not real worried about that because I don't tag a lot of stuff at one time. But my thing, the one that I still find annoying, which is what started this, is if you import a video clip, iTunes imports it as home video, no matter what it is. And I understand why they do that. If that's what it's most likely to be. But then if you import several video clips, it gets imported as home video, and then you have to go back and tag it and change that media kind field to home video, away from home video to music video or whatever it may be. You'll notice this if you, let's say you imported something from YouTube. There's some pretty creative musical type videos out there. And let's say you imported one of those into YouTube. They pop up as home video, even though they're not always home video. And music video might be a more appropriate tag. They still show up as home video, and you have to go back and change it. I'd almost prefer that it pop up a dialogue and ask you. If you're because that way you could batch file. You could create you could easily set up a folder that has a bunch of video that is music video, and have it say, what is this going to be? Pick once, pick music video, and you're done. And then you can go back and run on another sequence. Dialogue comes up and it says, what do you want this set to? You set it to home video, you're done. That's something that I think I'd like to see, or something similar, some kind of change that addresses that and makes tagging a little bit more efficient. Even if I know there are third-party taggers out there, I get that. But there are also a lot of people like me who don't import large amounts of content at one time. And speaking of content, I want to remind you to back up your iTunes library regularly, frequently, and often. Yes, I know those are redundant, but that seems to be the only way it can stick. Well, guys, looks like our weather's picking up a little bit this evening. I'm going to go ahead and call it quits for the evening. I hope that you've enjoyed the tips that I have for you. We'll have more next week. By the time next week comes around, I'll be a year older, but we won't discuss that. That's not a topic of discussion. But until next week, I'll see you guys on the forum. It's been your host, Sly Dude. I've enjoyed talking with you for this evening, and keep an eye out. We'll have the links to the information that was in the show. We'll have that for you a little bit later. I hope that you've enjoyed the evening. And I will see you next week on the weekly Mac Forum video chat. Thank you for joining us.